staff. The judge said that violations of this order would lead to swift, meaningful sanctions. I am joined now by former acting Solicitor General Neil Katyal. Neil, first of all, it's great to see you in person. New York City is where all the action is, legally speaking, haven't you heard? First of all, meaningful sanctions. What does that practically mean?
Well, it could mean, in an ordinary thing, if there's a gag order imposed and it's violated, it means putting someone in jail. Now, a gag order, Alex, is really hard to get in a case. Like, I don't think I've ever seen it in any of my 1,000-plus cases. Yeah, I mean, because people know, like, they use common sense. And, you know, it's kind of like failing kindergarten. To get a gag order imposed, you got to kind of try.
Trump work at it.
Yeah, Trump managed to work at it and do it and succeed. But it took a lot of work on his part. And now I think the judge is basically saying, you attack a member of my staff and there will be serious sanctions, and including even up to jail.
Well, and yet, as hard as it is to get the gag order, I think it's the broad expectation that Trump is inevitably going to violate it in some fashion or slander some other person involved in this case, whether it's the prosecution or the judge himself.
Yeah.
So would your expectation be that this is going to be kind of the, you know, a laddering up of a punitive ladder up in terms of the judge issuing more gag orders until at some point he is forced to do something more drastic?
Yes, exactly. So basically, like, if we're going to ask, is Trump going to violate the gag order? Almost certainly, yes. I mean, it's more likely that he'll violate the gag order than almost anything, like than George Santos being the next speaker. I mean, we're talking, you know, a significant probability he's going to violate the gag order. And then the question is, will the judge at that point take the really heavy medicine of putting a former president in jail? Or will there be some sort of warning and monetary fine first? I expect the latter, but it does really depend on exactly how Trump violates it.
Well, and isn't Trump's sort of goal, his existential goal, to stress test institutions? And the judicial branch is no exception to that. The idea that, you know, part of this is he feeds off of this controversy. He gains strength from disruption. And I mean, honestly, can you say as a lawyer that we as a country could really face a possibility of a former president, criminal defendant being put in jail? That just seems, as necessary as that may ultimately be, that seems really hard to fathom.
Right. Your diagnosis of the problem seems exactly right to me. Trump is a kind of Voldemort-like figure who, like, gets his strength by basically attacking institutions. And he does it here. He's doing it in Washington, D.C. with the January 6th trial, of which there's another potential gag order and a hearing on that's coming up. So, yes, that's how Trump acts. And you know, judges are loath to jail anyone, you know, particularly before a jury convicts, or here it's a bench trial that would, you know, a judge finding a guilt. So you don't like to do stuff in advance. But when you have a litigant who behaves this way, you got no other choice. And let me just tell you, if this were any other litigant, we would already see serious sanctions, perhaps even jail at this point.
You mentioned Judge Tanya Chutkan, who's overseeing the federal case against Trump and his activities around the 2020 election. She's having a hearing on October 16th to sort of determine whether or not there's going to be punitive measures taken against Trump. The prosecution, the DOJ, would very much like the president to be censored in some way. Are judges watching each other's behavior in this? Like, does Judge Engoron in the Tish James case sort of set a precedent for Judge Chutkan, or are these sort of separate and apart from one another?
Well, the technical answer is they're separate and apart from one another. What happens in one trial shouldn't carry over and spill over into the next, but they do, of course. Judges are human beings, and every time you cross a threshold, other jurisdictions watch. So, for example, it's New York that crossed the threshold of indicting a former